always one fucker on mute. That's me this time. Hello everyone, welcome to the Production Podcast, presented by two old friends, myself, Fionn Gregor, and Adam Smythe, who both work in the advertising industry in the UK. On our podcast, we'll be chatting to an array of people from the advertising world about their journey in that industry and sure whatever else comes into our heads. And this week, I'm delighted to welcome Tim Katz to the podcast. Hello, Tim.
Hello, gents. Thank you for having me.
No, thanks for joining us, Tim. So I'm going to kick off by saying that I have done a few jobs with Knucklehead, and obviously the work that comes out from you guys is brilliant. But I think the question that we always would kick off with is, how did you get to where you are now? What was your start in the industry? Where was your, what were your humble beginnings, if they were humble at all?
Well, okay. I never really intended to work in the advertising industry. Actually, I was going to be a great documentary maker. That was my plan. And when I left university, I did my CV in the day. There was no email, so you used to have CVs and you'd send them off to people. And I sent off a load of, teed up all the contacts I could, and I sent my CV to a friend of my brother's who was a producer or a booker at the time at the moving picture company, and he passed it on to a friend of his. And I got a call like a week after I'd left university from these people saying, "Oh, we've got a shoot. Do you want to come and be our runner?" So I was like, "Yeah, sounds great." Didn't really, I sort of knew what a runner was because my sister was a production manager, so I sort of had an idea about it. And they said, "Great, what's your rate?" I was like, "No idea." So I just said, "Oh, the usual." And they said to me, "Okay, well, the call time's 3:00 in the afternoon, and it's at Rich Street, E1. At the time, this was in 1992, so Canary Wharf was either just being built or had been built, and it was a shot of the road name, Rich Street, and you could see the Canary Wharf Tower in the background. So that was the start of the shoot. I didn't know that 3:00 call time meant it was a night shoot. So, of course, I turned up in a T-shirt, there all night till 6:00 in the morning. And, it was a budget and Scarpa Productions. I'm the runner, but I'm also driving one of the vans. That's how I got into it. I started off as a runner, and I loved it. What was good for me was from the very first minute of being on set, like the first hour of being on set, I was like, this is the best thing ever. This is what I'm going to do. It was just exciting and glamorous, and there was camaraderie, and I just knew right from the get-go, I was like, right, this is it. So I was very lucky in that way, I think.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I like that kind of story of the first time out. I remember one of the first times I came to London. I was working on a short film, and I was the first AD. didn't even know what it was.
Frightening.
And on set, I'd done a schedule. I'd kind of I'd worked it out, and then I remember the DOP saying to me and the director, we were kind of talking, "What time do you want to turn over at?" A slight panic attack. I don't know what that means. So I just said to the DOP, "What time would you like to turn over at?"
The old spin the question back.
And that was it. I've been winging my way in the industry since then.
No, I remember doing that shoot, and then, it was just totally intoxicating. That's the word I would use for it. There was no thought that I was ever going to do something else.
Yeah. And where were you living? Were you living at home? Were you slumming it on a couch?
I was sharing a flat with two other guys in West Hampstead, two really old friends. One of my friends, this shows how old I am. One of my friends was working on Planet 24, was the really cool production company, and they used to have a show called The Big Breakfast, which I think probably launched the careers of Chris Evans and people like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Was it Zoe Ball? No, I'm making that up.
Yeah, that whole class came up. Bob Geldof had started Planet 24 with some guy who went on to become a Labour peer. Anyway, they were super cool. So I was living with these guys. They were working on The Big Breakfast. Actually, one guy was working on The Big Breakfast, and one guy was working in a bar, and then at night he would go out and steal scaffolding planks from building sites and come home and cut them up and make furniture in our living room. So that was the three of us, and we were living in West Hampstead doing that. But to your point of how did this all start, I had a very fortunate moment actually. I did about a year as a runner, and then I got a job as a PA. That was the process, wasn't it? It was like runner, PA, you go in-house somewhere. And I was working for this company that was they called themselves a production company, but actually they were a post-production company called Brewers. And what they would do is they would dry hire Harry suites at the mill and the frame store, and they'd put their own Harry operators in there. And that was the job. I mean, it was good business for them, but dull as you like. I mean, my job as a PA would be to go along and sit in the suites and just be there, and then get the pneumatic tapes at the end. And I was chatting to this really, really old school agency producer one day in a telecine session, a guy called Alistair Fryer, who he had been in advertising for 4,000 years. Used to smoke a lot, was always pissed, always had a cab waiting outside, and wore a lot of black Armani. It would be like, oh, Jesus.
Proper
and we were looking
proper old school.
Yeah. And we were in one of the big grading suites at the mill, telecine, grading on film. And the rushes it was a Timotei ad that they had shot in New Zealand. And it was a classic shot. Some girl she puts her head in the stream, flicks her hair back, and beautiful Milford sound in the background. I remember looking at the images on the screen, and this agency producer, the only sensible thing he probably ever said to anybody in that 50-year career, he saw me looking at it. He was like, you know what? If you work in production, you will be there at Milford Sound on the set. And if you work in post-production, you'll be here in a dark room looking at it on a screen. And I was like, boom. And I gave up my job the next day. I was like, okay, it's about production for me. It is not about post-production. I am very grateful to him for that comment, because actually that sent me,
it was like light bulb moment where you were learning the industry, but you found that point where someone said, listen, this is how it kind of can work.
Yeah, I knew that I wanted to be a producer, but when you're 22, you don't really know what that means. But I knew that I wasn't a director. I knew I didn't have that in me, but that production, I like production. That bit of the crafting bit is not the bit that excites me. It's being a production manager, PA production manager, line producer. Those years, they're hard years. Hard. It's not hard like a proper job, but they're long hours and it's pretty intense. But it's fun. I was in my mid-20s flying around the world as a production manager, going on big jobs. What's not to like, And actually, I had a sort of moment, because I must have been about 25 or so, and I was a busy production manager. But I had this thing, and I was like, fuck, I'm stuck in advertising. How do I end up working on ads? It's fun, but it's still 30-second commercials. What I really wanted to do was make documentaries. I was going to be a great documentary producer. And I had that moment of like, if you want to get into documentaries, you need to give all this up now and go back. You need to. And I was earning good money as a commercials production manager in the 90s. You need to take a pay cut, go back, relearn a different skill set. And actually, I bottled it. I was like, no, this is really good fun. I don't want to do that. Which is, I'm not regretful of it, but it was just that was another fork in the road.
Do you still want to make documentaries?
Yeah, the idea of telling stories is interesting, for sure. Of course it is, and doing long form stuff. But also, we're fortunate enough to have a very talented long form development guy who runs our development wing at Knucklehead, and I watch what he does, and I think, wow, it's a different skill set, because the time zone, the duration of the project is so much longer. What I've realized is 25 years in commercials, I like the fact that a project comes, it's a month to 3 months, soup to nuts. It's really intense. You totally focus, and then it ends. It has a start, a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then you do something else. And I think I've realised I quite enjoy that.
Yeah, it can take years to get something up and running, but then even on a documentary, you could probably be filming. You could be filming it for the best part of a year, right? There's still, I'd say, I imagine a lot of the same elements, like the flying around the world, maybe, and really kind of the excitement there. But it's just it's much a longer process.
I think so. I was talking to a director the other day guy I work with a lot who does a lot of commercials that came out of factual TV. And he was saying, yeah, you think that the factual thing is going to be really fun and exciting and it's really fulfilling. But if you're making a film about prisons, say, fly on the wall docs thing about prisons, you're going to spend 10 weeks living in a Premier Inn next to Birmingham prison, waiting for the call to say you've got access. I'm not sure how appealing that is to me now, to be honest. But also I think it's where you are in your career. I mean, we've all been doing this a while now, so you sort of, do we become more resistant to change as we go along? Probably, unless you have to change. If you're in a fortunate position that actually change hasn't been foisted on you, maybe you're less willing to change. I don't know.
What do you think your best skill is? What do you think your best attribute is that you bring to the table?
Well, there's a question. I think I'm quite good at working with directors. Each director is different. Everyone's got their own process. So I quite enjoy working with directors that I don't know, because you have to kind of figure out their process a little bit. And, you also have to remember, I think a lot of people forget, it's the director's process. You have to fine tune it, but actually the director's name is at the top. You've got to make it work for them. It's not about you making the director work for you. I mean, yes, if you're doing a job with someone who's on their very first job and they're straight out of film school and they're doing their first 10-second pack shot shoot, you might lean in a bit more heavily in telling them how it's going to be. But if you just land in and you're doing a proper job with a proper director, it's about listening to them. And yeah, of course, you want the job to go in the way that you've set it up, or it took me quite a long time as a producer to understand that when I had made a plan, if the plan changed, that for the better, that was okay. You have to learn to give up a little bit. You think you've got a plan, and this is how it's going to be, and it's absolutely. And then you'll be in a meeting, and someone will say, one of the other heads of department will go, yeah, but we should do it like that. That's probably not the right location, is it? And I would be like, no, it is the right. After a while, you're like, yeah, it's probably not the right location. I think that's it. I think learning to be a little bit adaptable.
Yes, and be reasonable, be open, and listen, sort of adapting that way.
Yeah, I think so. One of the production managers that I used to work with a lot said, I said, so what is it like doing a job with me? And he said, well, you have a rough idea of where you think the job is going. And then when shit happens, you just sort of gently adapt it, which I actually took that to be quite a compliment, as opposed, I don't know if that's the right way or not the right way, but I think I'm wary of people who have a definite 100% plan.
That sounds like a very confident way of working, not having a definite plan, but kind of knowing what roughly needs to get done and then adapting to the curveballs and the things that happen in real time. And that, like you say, that comes with experience more than anything. You don't know that in your 20s. I think it's because you're learning. There's a steep learning curve there from your running days to your PMing to producing. It's there's a lot to learn.
It's funny. I had a real light bulb moment a couple of days ago. Actually, I'm working on a pretty big job at the moment, where we're working direct for a brand and we're doing the whole thing. We're doing the whole thing. It's quite a sizable job. And I was thinking about all of the back end of it. I think about the shoot and then the music and the post and the edit and the voiceover and this and the sound and the mix. And I suddenly was like, I'm not very good at the back end bit. That's not what I'm good at. There's people much better than me who are good at finishing up jobs, who are good at dealing with the music and the sound and going back 12 times to the mix and this. And I was like, I've got a really good idea. I'm not going to do that bit. I'm going to do part of the job and I'm going to get someone in who's better than me to do the other bit. It only took me 26 years to get to that point. But I was like, and it felt like an amazing release. I was like, that's it. I was really pleased when I finally got to that bit. But
it actually, there's a couple of things there, right, that are interesting. Because one, people, I think, sometimes are afraid to admit to a weakness or to that scenario, right, where they say there's actually people better than me, and I'm gonna, I think there's a kind of vulnerability there that you open yourself to, which is really nice. But it's also probably something that probably 20 years ago, a similar thing where it's like you want to do the production and not the post, when you're talking to that producer, right? Like there was that kind of, probably there's the kind of the root of that is probably where you can see exactly what you want to be doing and actually what you're really good at doing as well.
I think exactly. It's just echoing that thing from all those years ago. But, this morning, the first thing I did this morning was sit down and make a schedule for a shoot that's happening in 4 different countries. And I really enjoyed it. I sat down, I made a cup of coffee, and then, in fact, I turned all the Wi-Fi off so no one would be calling me or emailing me. And I sat down with a blank piece of paper. I was like, okay, I'm going to shoot there, which means that we need to be doing this on this date. And it took me a while to get it, and it was great. I really enjoyed it.
But that's such a producer thing to do, right? Because I remember I learned movie magic scheduling in my 20s, right? And it just the ability to have all these scenes as kind of little cards that you could just move around, and like the scheduling thing, I think, is just something that it was instantly appealing to me as a producer anyway, like really trying to figure it out. It was like a jigsaw puzzle. And there's a lot of fun to it. So you can, I think any producer would probably relate to what you did this morning.
So I was in our office, well, pre-pandemic days, I was in our office in America, and I was talking to one of our young producers. We're looking at scripts, trying to figure out, days and stuff. And I said, tell you what, go and write out all the scenes on a piece of paper and then cut them up, into strips. And she was looking at me like I'd gone completely insane. I mean, who actually writes something on a piece of paper? And she's like, what, scissors? What are you talking about? I was like, go and do it. So then we had our strips and we did a strip schedule laid out on the table. And I was like, look, that's not going to fit into that day, so move that there and we can do that. And that was fun. We did that. And then a couple of weeks later, I was in the office and I noticed she was doing it for another job.
Yeah.
And that was really good. I thought, okay, that's how you did it.
That's probably changed their kind of approach to scheduling. And it is a really good technique. That's something that it's kind of like the movie magic thing where you put your scenes in and except in the advertising world, we don't really have a scheduling software, but movie magic for the film industry is default. You got to know how to do it. And, that's what everyone uses, but there's nothing like that in advertising. I always kind of found that strange when I first started scheduling, because I came from more a movie background into advertising,
right?
Maybe for similar reasons that you were talking about. Like I did some movies for 6-9 months, but then I was doing commercials for like a month, and I really enjoyed that sharp, short hit of, adrenaline rush and chaos, as opposed to the longer kind of stint.
But you know what? Following on for what you're saying in terms of the chaos, something you just said, Tim, really rang true for me. You said, I sat down and I turned all my Wi-Fi off. Do you find that sometimes in your role there can be so many things firing at you that sometimes you do just need to shut it off and say, guys, I just need to focus, or I just need 15 minutes to really dive into this thing and problem solve? Or are you able to kind of do loads of multitasking and operate at that level of everything's coming at you all at once?
I think,
or do you think it's important? I suppose my question is, do you think it's important to take time?
I mean, yes, obviously the answer is important to take time. I do a lot of multitasking, as I'm sure we all do. I don't find it that difficult, actually. I mean, I kind of can deal with that. But equally, I am aware now that if there's something really, sometimes I won't do it. I won't engage on something, or I'll put somebody else on a job because I know that I can't give it the attention it requires. Again, that takes a while to get there in your own thing. I am not the best person for this because I am not going to be the best producer for it. Sometimes I think it would be nice to work in a job where you dealt with one time zone, and when you weren't at work, you weren't always on. What I find now is I'm quite good at the weekends. If I'm not actually in production on something, I try not to look at my emails. I'm like, you know what? Unless it's like I need to send on a casting, or I need to see if a document's ready to check, I'm not going to dribble through the weekend looking at those emails. It's too easy to do that. I don't want to do that. Hard though. I mean, the pressure's being put on everybody now is ridiculous.
And do you think that's what it comes down to? Because I do. I think sometimes, like, deadlines change, or people need to review things earlier than what you sort of already agreed on, and because we're all problem solvers and doers, we say, yeah, okay, we can make it happen, but sometimes at the detriment or sacrifice of our own time. And actually, what I'm starting to learn is it's actually, your time is valuable still. Like when you step away from the job, it's valuable because it keeps you fresh and creative still, I think, and able to come at it with like a fresh head.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think funny enough, I was having this conversation with someone who runs one of the big London commercials edit houses today, because we've got a thing where we're doing a job and the director's feeling like, and the editor said, I'm going to do 10-hour days, and the director was like, yeah, well, but the editor was like, look, I'll start at 8, but I'm finishing at 6. And what's happened, I've realised from talking to the person that runs the edit house, is that in a time of remote working, no one ever goes home. Used to be, you went to the edit house to do a job. At some stage at 5:30 or 6 or 6:30, it stopped. You went home.
You have to leave.
But now everyone's at home, so it doesn't end. Of course it ends at 8:30 when people have their dinner, or 9 o'clock or whatever. But that's not healthy. I don't think that the creative decisions being made by an editor who's done 5 14-hour days are going to be the best. I was talking to one of our PMs the other day, and she mentioned to me that she had worked till 1 a.m. the night before, and I was like, why? I mean, not why as in, I understand why, but I was like, well, it made me think, okay, we are doing something wrong if we've got PMs working till 1 a.m. What's that? Maybe we need to be more resourced. Maybe we need to manage our deadlines more and say to people, no, you can't have it then. You can have it a day later. Or in the last lockdown, or the lockdowns before, I was pretty good actually. Because I realized that time when I wasn't traveling to work, I had started to work in that time, and I was like, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to turn my computer on at 7:30 in the morning and just start. It's just, so I consciously tried to do something. I would go for a run, or I'd read a newspaper, or whatever.
Yeah, it's really interesting because throughout my whole career so far, I've not worked with a single person who doesn't care. If we need to work late, 9 times out of 10, the team of people that I'm working in the studio with will all stay. And we do it sometimes at the sacrifice of our own time, our own sort of freedom, if you like. But we want to do a good job and we want to get it done well. And I think even like Fionn and I, when we first started working together, it was that sense of, oh, we're similar, like we care. I don't think there's many people out there that don't care. And it's a good thing. But it's also good to sort of tell people to take a step back and listen and or view their sort of time as something very precious.
I totally agree, but I am also aware we're fortunate that it's fun. The thing I always wonder: do lawyers or dentists or welders or whatever, do they feel the same? I mean, I'm sure smart people engage in what they're doing. I mean, I feel sorry for people who don't enjoy what they do. And I think that this is a business. We're lucky because it is to do something that is, you physically make something, and it's creative, and it's quite exciting, and you work with really good people. That's something that I love. The quality of the people you work with is high. Partly because I think it's quite an intense thing to do. So people who are not up to it get weeded out quite early on. It's pretty rare doing what we do that you come up with, you work with people and you think, well, you're just not very good. That almost never happens now. But so I like that. You're working with good people, smart people. And as you say, people are engaged. You get found out early on if you're not engaged.
That's true, because imagine your first shoot, the night shoot you did in Canary Wharf. If you really weren't up for it or if you didn't like it, that would have been the first and last shoot you've ever done.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So if you were, say you're in your position now, Tim, and you were on that set and you'd met young Tim on Rich Street, what would you think? Would you be like, who's this jumped up little twat? Or would you be like, oh, he's got kind of something about him? Like, what would you say to this person, or what would your advice maybe on day one be?
It's a really good question.
From what you know now.
From what I know now, what do you say to someone starting out? There are a few little rules. Never say no, or always say yes. Always be early. It's such little things, such small little things. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Just be there 5 minutes early. Yeah, I don't have many things, but late isn't good. I don't think. And do stuff with good grace. When you are the runner and you are sent to get 50 pizzas or the coffee order for the agency or go and stop the people from walking in, just do it with good grace because it's work. Because whatever you're doing, try and do it. I think that's really important. But you can't teach that to people. People either get that or they don't, I think.
There are people, due to the nature of the business that we're in, that are challenging to work with, right? Like maybe headstrong, maybe there's a number of words you could probably describe them as, and you must have dealt with challenging people. I mean, what's your kind of approach with challenging people, and kind of do you recall any kind of moment in particular, looking back now, of a very challenging time, and what was it? What was it about?
Yeah, there are. The thing about challenging people is normally there's a reason. Most people are not inherently difficult. Well, no, I said some people are inherently difficult, but the challenge is to try and understand why they are. What is driving this? Why are they being like this? Usually it's insecurity, isn't it? Usually it's, my experiences with directors. So if directors being difficult, or it's an insecurity. It's an insecurity. Is the piece going to be any good? Are they going to get what they need? So that could be quite enjoyable to try and figure that out.
I mean, what you're ultimately saying there is about empathy, right? Like empathizing with somebody as opposed to just challenging them back. to try and understand where they're coming from, which is obviously a very wise approach.
But also, I think, one of the things we learn, don't we, as we go along, is if someone is like if you're talking about somebody and something, and somebody is like a hard no, we're not going to do that. No, I'm never going to go there. I'm not shooting in that location. The time to fix that is not there and then. You are, if everything is running at 98 degrees, you are not going to calm it down then. So just come back to it. Because if you get to who blinks first, you are not going to, you don't ever want to be in a position of who blinks first.
Like, you don't have to be so reactive all the time. It's not like you've got to solve that thing right then and there, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just a part of a thing. Like it could be a part of a mix or a part of a shoot, and you kind of look. Let's get the rest of this done, or the rest of this mix laid back, and then we'll come back to that bit there and try and solve it. And yeah, like you're probably going to have a much better conversation then.
I think so. I think, I mean, very occasionally you come up against people and you just think, okay, you are just being difficult now, and that's quite unusual. But occasionally you have that, and then you get to choose how to react to that. I did have years and years ago, I was doing a music video, and we're in Cape Town, and we'd flown a makeup artist from New York to do this artist's makeup, and the treatment was all about this artist walking in the rain. So they implied that there was an element of her getting wet because she was in the rain. And we did the first take, and then he said to me, this makeup artist came up to me really aggressive and said, "It's raining." I was like, well, yeah, I mean, that is generally the only idea about this music video. He said, well, no one told me, and I haven't got waterproof makeup or something. I was like, well, if you had read the treatment before you travelled from New York, you would know that actually that was the whole idea. And I remember he got really funny with me, and I remember being confused about how, I was like, why would you're not painting yourself in a great light here. I remember that very clearly.
And how did that resolve itself?
He got quite, he thought that shouting was a good thing to do. And he really made a big scene, and he actually poked me in the chest. I was like, fine. On his journey back from Cape Town, he had 3 flights to get to New York. So I cancelled his middle flight. And that was it.
That's fantastic.
Okay, so just thinking kind of ahead, right? Like, what do you think will happen over the next year or two, coming out of the world of 2020 and 2021? I mean, over the next kind of maybe 4 to 5 years, production looking like? Will there be more remote? What's your kind of prediction?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I'd just been away on a shoot for the first time a couple of weeks ago. I went away to Slovenia for 2 weeks. First time I'd been away abroad on a job since February 2020. And we had, it was great. We went away and we had free agency with us. And I was delighted the agency could come. I was surprised actually that they were able to swing that. The job was undeniably better because they were there, 100%. I fear there'll be a lot more remote shooting. I don't think we, as in production, will be remote. I mean, we do it and it works, but it's quite hard work. We've got a job happening at the moment where the director's in LA, the agency are in China, and we're shooting in China, and the production producer is in London. So he's trying to wrangle that. I mean, those are hard yards.
That's hard work. Yeah.
I think there'll be quite a lot of us being somewhere and talking to a screen at the location, talking to our clients going, do you like it? And them going, well, can you just move the camera a bit to the right? Or what? In some ways, though, although it makes it is difficult, it also focuses people a lot more, because the people who are looking at the screen, they can only see that. So they're not wandering off to get a coffee and saying, "Oh, it looks good over there. Maybe we shoot it around here as well." What really surprised me, actually, I really noticed this, is having done a load of remote shoots where I would log on in the morning, sitting here at my desk, we'd shoot something, and then the team that were in Milan or France or wherever, they'd say, "Right, well, we're moving to the next location. So can you log back on in an hour and 20? It really shocked me how little gets shot in a shoot day. How little, what a small amount of time the camera is actually rolling in a 12-hour shoot day. That was a thing. That was a real wake up.
That is interesting. You talked about intoxicating, that feeling of being on set, and that's what really almost defined your career. How are you finding that now, sitting there, at the table? Do you still feel some sense of intoxication with the idea of, you're filming, or is it really scaled back and it's not as intoxicating?
It is not as intoxicating looking at my Zoom screen, watching some people up a mountain in Seville. There's just no. It's still fun. It's still, I was here the other day and I've got a teenage daughter, and I called her. I said, "Look, come and look at this." And I had 2 screens going, and I was like, "This is crazy. Look, we had a feed from an underwater tank in Paris, and we had a feed from a drone that was above Milan." I was like, how mad is that? So in that way, yes, of course, that's exciting, and that is intoxicating, but it's not the same as you and I are there, Fionn, looking, "Oh, look, the drone's taken off. It's really good. Look, it's really cool."
Or being there and it's the first shot of the morning and we're both a bit hungover because we just went a bit fucking mad the night before.
Exactly. At the same time, having not been away for 15 months, going away for 2 weeks felt like a wrench. 2 weeks of hotel living, and there's a bit of me that's like, okay, I remember this, I've done this. It was exciting to go away again, but there was a bit of me that was like, okay, yeah, I remember this game, and I've done this before. It did feel possibly like I've done my years away. I mean, it's still good fun to go away, but you realise 2 weeks is quite a long time to be away on a job. 2 weeks away from your family, 2 weeks away from your life.
Well, that is interesting, right? Because you know what? If that was to maybe continue over the coming months or year, maybe you find yourself stepping away from that side of the things and maybe focusing on those bigger projects. Like it could be a documentary that you can sit there, you work with the director, for a year, or you're on all for a year, or 3 or 4 directors, 3 or 4 documentaries, and you're more kind of rooted to those kind of passion projects to really get stuck into a film. And then that's it for a while. Maybe this could be a kind of a little junction for you.
I think it could, but also what you realise is it's like muscle memory. It's hard to unlearn what you know. If you are used to something, you default to what you're used to. Yeah, you sort of you are just, okay, I get what I do. I go away and I do a job for 2 weeks and I come back. But I think it's also where you are, at what age you are, at what stage you are in your career, isn't it?
Totally. And also I do believe that when you're aware of things like that, that's also a good position to be in, because there's certainly times when I'm just so involved in my work that I'm a bit selfish and I forget things, and I'm not really that zoned into family life, home life. And I'd say now I'm more aware of that, because beforehand I would never really have thought of that. I would have been quite selfish, whereas now I'm a bit more in a way unselfish in that regard.
But again, it's about timing, isn't it? It's about where you are in the cycle, where you are in your life. I'm an 18-year-old son. He's just finished school. He wants to be a runner. He needs to work 700 days a year. He needs to do every single job he gets offered. He needs to be hungover at 5 o'clock in the morning, getting up for his call time at the Holiday Inn in Preston to go and get rained on for 14 hours. That's what you need to do those hard yards. I always say to the PAs that want to go up to production manager or whatever, what happens is they come, they do a year on the desk, answering the phone, or they do a year as a runner, and then they become a PA. I'm like, it's brilliant. You're a PA. You now just need to do 800 jobs. There's no speeding it up. You just need to do a gazillion jobs. Yeah, and that's the fun bit. And if you don't find it fun, you're doing the wrong bit, or you're in the wrong job.
And this is probably my last question to you, actually, Tim, and that is, do you think sometimes we can be too quick to try and progress than just stay where we are and learn better?
Yeah, it's a hard thing, isn't it? Because it's a really hard thing. The production is a hierarchical gig, isn't it? You start as the runner and you end up as the producer. I don't think there is a hard and fast rule. I think some people go fast and some people don't. Some people are ready for it. I always quite like it. Sometimes you go and shoot. It doesn't really happen in the UK, but sometimes you go off to shoot abroad somewhere, and the focus puller will be like a 65-year-old man. In the UK, the focus pullers are all 28 with great trainers and a good watch. But there you'll have the 65-year-old focus puller he doesn't even need to look. He can just do it like that. He can smell where the focus is. He never went lighting. He never went operating. He was just he was happy being the focus puller. He was going to be the best focus puller you can be.
Respect for that.
I like that too.
Totally.
Cheers for your time, Tim.
Thank you.
Been fun. Maybe we could do it another time in a pub.
We will.
But no, great chat, Tim. Thanks for your time.
Absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much for everything. It's been a wonderful chat, and much appreciated.
So you've been listening to the Production Podcast with Fionn and I, and this week our guest was Tim Katz, managing partner over at Knucklehead. Catch us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and please share if you like the show with your friends, colleagues, anyone that you think would be interested in this conversation. And obviously tune back in again for further stories from our wicked guests. Speak soon.